But we had a situation where two strange things happened. We made a crop circle, and the second that we started to make it, this pink light came across, blinked on above us, right in the center, right above us. And somebody said, well, that's obviously a chopper. We're in trouble, because the military do take an interest. So you do often see patches and military aircraft around crop circles. And a lot of military bases are around where crop circles are made as well, which we're not sure if that's a coincidence. And anyway, so we saw this light and we realised that it wasn't a chopper, because there was no sound and there was no rotor blades and there was nothing at the end of it. And that pink light was there until the end, and then blinked off the second we stopped making it.
I think we all get the feeling that something just isn't right in the world. Welcome, fellow foilers, to the Tinfoil Hat Club, where we dare to discuss all the things we don't talk about in church. And where yesterday's fiction becomes tomorrow's fact.
When you've got a government that's lying to your face, controlling the information through the media that it owns, that's not a recipe for peace in a civilization.
Atomic. The electromagnetic waves affecting our planet.
Megalithic cyclopean sites.
Anderson Cooper, intern for the CIA.
Watchers in the days of Noah.
Well, hello and welcome to the Tinfoil Hat Club. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Ben.
And thank you all for joining us yet again. So we are going to have a really interesting show today. Before I bring our guest on, I will do a couple of quick housekeeping procedures, as is our normal. And then we will actually get into the show. And I'll do a quick little intro for our guest as well before we actually bring his avatar on the screen. And there's a reason that we're going to do it that way today that I will explain here in just a moment. But if you are joining us live, thank you guys very much. You can always find out what we have going on, and you can find out what our live schedule is if you head over to the tfhc.com, our website, /live stream, or you can head over there and you can actually click watch live, and it will show you what we have coming up, all of our schedule for our upcoming live streams. So feel free to go over there. We always love to have you guys join us live. And when you're joining us live, we always love to see your chats. We will have all of the chats feeding into the chat here, and we try to incorporate those into the show if we can find space to do that. We try to get to those as you guys drop those in here. So thank you very much for your participation there. If you are watching this down the line, you're listening to this rather, you're probably listening to an edited podcast release. We do the live shows. We do every show live, and then we have those up for about a week, and then we take them down, and then there is a regular podcast release that is actually released several weeks from today. And if you're listening on there, you can always join us live. Again, head over to our website, thetfhc.com /live stream, and you can join us over here on the live when we do the shows. While you're on our website, thetfhc.com, you will actually see a pop-up appear, and just fill out all that information in there, and that will sign you up for our newsletter. You'll get it every Monday sent right to your inbox, and that will keep you up to date on everything we have going on the foil. In addition to that, it will actually grant you access, and we will send you an invite to our private Facebook fans group. And then also, you will instantly get sent to your email a coupon good for 20% off your first purchase in the merch store. So we would appreciate you guys doing that. Thank you very much. Also, if you're interested in becoming a member of the show, we will actually have the QR code up in the top corner of the screen throughout the show. I'll go ahead and throw that up there right now. And you can actually head over to our website as well, the tfhc.supercast.com. That is our membership website. Or if you go to our normal website, the tfhc.com, you can actually click on members, and that will get you access to our membership page. You will find out all the information about membership there. It starts at $5 a month. We have a $7 a month plan, and we have the top tier $9 a month plan that will actually get you into everything we have. You will become an HD heavy duty foiler, and you get access to all of our HD only shows and live shows, recordings, and several other perks. So you guys can check that out over at the tfhc.supercast.com. And then last, we have a sale going on right now. So you guys might have heard us talk about this a few times. I will throw this up on the screen really quick, but you guys can see here, it is our obfuscated tee. So actually not just the tee, but the hoodie. If you go over to our website and you want to get your hands on one of these cool L.A. Marzulli inspired tees or hoodies, all you need to do is you actually just type in the code disclosure at checkout, and you'll get 20% off your tee or your hoodie. So take advantage of that, because it is going to be going away by the end of the month. So you only have, a couple weeks left. So make sure you guys head over to the website and check that out today.
Very cool design.
It is. We're going to actually, hopefully by the next live stream, we'll have a couple of examples. Ben and I ordered some of our own gear, and we're going to actually model that for you so you can see what it looks like live in person. So yeah, that'll be kind of awesome. And then go ahead. What are you going to say? Okay. As always, you can always follow us, like, subscribe, share, wherever you normally do those things. Please make sure that you're doing that. Leave us a comment, leave us a review. If you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to us at, all that helps us get in front of more people. So we would appreciate that
I had a million
much.
thoughts run through, and none of them was like, I better say that.
Well, probably best left unsaid, then, Ben. So there you go. Without further ado, we will bring in our guest today, and I will do a quick little introduction. You are only going to get an avatar of this gentleman today, and there's a very distinct reason for that. We are going to be talking about the phenomena, and I think phenomena is exactly what we're going to be talking about today, of crop circles. What are crop circles? How do they happen? Who is creating these? And our guest today is actually Citizen D. Now, we do know his first name, but we are not going to share that with you, because we're actually going to protect his anonymity. Not for any, crazy reason. We're not trying to be uber mysterious, but as part of his research into these things, he has actually been in the field while they have been created in farmers' fields. And as he said to us, farmers hold a grudge. So we just want to protect his anonymity as he has been studying these phenomenon, and he has been with them in the fields. And so that's why we are going to not show his picture today, but we have D joining us today. So D, thanks for joining us, man.
That's a pleasure, guys. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, man.
It's going to be good.
So as you can tell by the accent, D is one of our brothers across the pond. So he is joining us rather late his time tonight. So we appreciate that very much. But yeah, this is going to be a really fascinating conversation, because, we like to vet everybody before they come on the show. D does the same thing. He makes sure he checks out, people before he goes on their show. And we had a really good conversation, man. I forget how long we talked for. It was probably at least an hour and a half, maybe even longer. Yeah, really got into a lot of these things, and want to share some of that conversation today and get into even more stuff. But I guess for starters, man, just kind of talk about how you got interested in this particular phenomenon. What was kind of your gateway for that?
I've always, from a kid, been involved in ufology, the paranormal. Never understood why. It's not really been in my family at all. There was no, tropes as to why I should be into it. I was like born with an interest. And the first time I saw Close Encounters, it sort of touched me. I was only 12 years old, and it touched me on this primordial, latent level that I didn't understand. It was like a familiarity, guys. It was like when I saw Close Encounters, I thought, this isn't something I've seen for the first time. It really did touch me profoundly. And then in the 80s, we started to see, because obviously being a ufologist, I was eating the books. I was buying everything that came out. I was buying the John Keel books and Jack Valle and John Spencer and the Majestic 12 books. And then in the UFO case books, we started to see crop circles. Now, in those days, they were single flattenings. They looked like birth UFO. It looked like if a craft came down, it would indent in the size and shape of a circle, or you'd have single circles with 4 tiny satellites around them that looked like the craft from the science fiction films, like The Day the Earth Stood Still. And they were also seen in Australia. They're called tally nests. As things progressed, in 1990, we saw the first pictograms. Now, these were the first crop circles where they weren't looking like landed UFOs. They were like straight lines with door keys and dumbbells, etc. They were more like pictures. So instantly, you would never associate that with being a landed UFO. But what had happened was the image of UFOs and crop circles had become so ingrained, in the psyche, that they then suddenly became, oh, well, that's not a landed UFO. That's a message from our space brothers. Now, I went and visited my first crop circle in 1999, and it was near Avebury Stone Circle. It was like a pentagram thing, like a pentagon with triangles in it. It's absolutely fantastic. I had like a time shift in there in the I thought I was there for 10 minutes, and then it was getting dark. Then I realized I'd been there for 2 hours. I mean, that you can read into that what you like. Then I became more interested, and I started to fly them with a commercial pilot, and I used to fly over them every year. And then in the end, I thought, listen, I want to find out exactly what this is. So I was of the impression that they were done by some paranormal forces. We didn't know what they were. It was either military testing or paranormal forces or the earth itself speaking as a sentient body. I thought the only way I'm going to find out is by actually living in the area for a whole season. So I stayed there for 8 weeks, and then I started to become aware through listening to people on the campsite, strange people. There were strange reports emerging from people that had gone in to make the crop circles. Now, at that point, I was disdainful of crop circle makers. I thought that the mystery was very deep already, and I looked at it as being like a magician with like the ball under the 3 cups, and then some idiot coming along and adding another 10. We thought that they were pranksters. Yeah, exactly. We thought that they were pranksters. We thought that they were doing it for ego. We thought they were doing it to mess things up. But I kept on hearing more and more stories about people feeling that they were being compelled to make crop circles and pulled to make crop circles, and they were reporting really strange events before, during, and after creation. By before, I mean through dreams and synchronicities. So I thought, look, I'm going to have to go out. If they take me into their trust, I'm going to have to go out with a team and see if any of this strange stuff is real, okay? And if it's not real, I'll just walk away from the subject, and I'll just, fine, I'll start again. I'll just reboot. So I was called to help with the team, and the reason why they asked me was I was overheard saying, look, I'm really interested in what happens while they're being made. So I went out and I phoned my partner and I said, I'm going out to help on a crop circle this evening. If nothing weird happens, I'm never going to do it again. Okay. So we went out and we finished a crop circle. It was a 2-stage event. It had been started the night before, but they'd bitten off more than they could chew and they couldn't finish it. So when I went into it, it was already half done. The crop circle was completed, and I thought, this is all just a load of bunkum. Nothing's happened. I've seen nothing. There's no UFOs. There's no time slips. There's nothing. This is all just a load of guys just having a laugh and taking the mickey out of everybody, And then what happened was, when I had that thought, as soon as the circle was finished, at the very rim of the circle, at the very edge, I saw a magnesium flare go off that looked like a flashbulb from an old Polaroid camera. And I said to the team leader, we've had it. I said, somebody's been watching us all the time. And the sun was coming up by this time. Somebody's been watching us. They're taking pictures. This will probably be, in the local paper. We're in dead trouble here. because making crop circles is an illegal act. Okay, it's trespass, it's criminal damage, and you can get prosecuted through a civil action from the farmer. And he said, "Oh, don't worry about it." And what happened was that single light multiplied, and it turned into 6, and then it turned into a dozen, and then it turned into 30. It multiplied, and it went all around the perimeter of the crop circle, so that in the end we were like enclosed by this necklace of flaring lights that were glistening and just popping off. And the team leader looked heavenwards, and he said, "All right, we get the message, we're off now." And I said, "Who are you talking to, T?" And he said, "Well, when a crop circle's finished, we sometimes get a round of applause, and that's just it telling us to stop now, and to say if we add any more, we're probably going to mess it up." And it's kind of saying it's a little round of applause. And I said, "What are you talking about? Who's they?" And he just looked up at heavenwards and he said, "It's that lot." And then he said, "Okay, we're going now." Because the crop circle slogan is always, it's ours for as long as we're making it, but the second we leave the field, it's not ours anymore. And he said, "Okay, we're going now. You can do your work now with the crop circle." And then he said like goodbye. And at that point, the lights just off, all of them gone. And that was my first experience.
Wow.
Okay.
So effectively what it sounds like is you had these supernatural entities of some kind show up, and this person that's leading the team for this design effectively hands this thing over. Is that what I just understood?
Yeah,
Like gives over control. Like, hey, we did this for you. We built it. Now it's yours. Here you go.
There's a bit more to it than that, because we don't know sometimes what influences us to go into the fields in the first place. Okay, so what I'm just going off topic a little bit, but you'll see why. Sometimes we'll have a design written out, and you think you've invented it. You think, "Oh, that's quite cool," you know. And then, honestly, guys, you go to make it, and somebody's already done it, and then you think, where did that idea come from? And why has somebody else made that same circle? Okay, so the answer to your question is, we say it's ours for as long as we're making it, but we don't know if there's any third party involved before or during the creation process. Do you understand?
Yeah. Weird.
And now, just to emphasize that further, the second time, because what happens is you don't go out and become a team leader straight away. You're basically a foot soldier. So for the first few circles, you're just stomping the crop down. Somebody else measures it out. It takes about an hour or up to an hour to measure it out, depending on how big it is. And then you get the pawns that the foot soldiers stomping. We don't actually go and make our own circles unless we've done a few and we've learnt the ropes. Now, what happened to me was I had this recurring dream of swooping over the countryside and seeing 2 crop circles in adjacent fields. And the area wasn't an area that I was familiar with, but I knew in my mind it was Wiltshire. In my gut, it was Wiltshire. Now, I kept on having this dream. And then one day, driving through Wiltshire, so the other thing was, when I had this dream, there was always a guy next to me, and he was this chap that I went to school with that I haven't thought of for 30 years. I've got no connection with him at all. I've got no reason to think of him. And then I wake up always thinking, well, there's that crop circle dream again. And why is that guy next to me? I went to school with him. I hadn't seen him for 30 years. I was driving down the road through Wiltshire, and I took a wrong turn. Now, wrong turn in this topic is always something which is loaded, because you say, was it a wrong turn? Was I supposed to do it? I went down this wrong turn. I found the landscape that was in my dream, okay, which was weird enough because I'd never seen it before. Then I looked back and I saw that the name of the road that I'd driven down by mistake was the name of the road that this school friend lived in 30 years ago. And I took that as a sign, and I thought, right, I've got to make a crop circle. I've got to make both crop circles in 2 fields. And then I looked at the logistics. There was a big hill separating the 2 fields. I phoned my wife and I said, look, I've got a choice of 2 crop circles here. I can only get one down. Which one should I do? And she didn't know. And I spoke to my team. I said, I'm 50-50. I don't know which one to do. And in the end, I said, let's go to a field. I'll go with both designs and I'll be Luke Skywalker. I will just choose not to choose and just open myself up, empty my mind and see what comes first. And then I did it. I made the first stump mark. We made this crop circle. The next day, I got a phone call from my partner, who was at home, miles away. And she said, my God, you were busy last night. I said, well, we got the circle down. And she goes, no, you didn't. I said, we did. She goes, you got them both down. I said, we didn't. I said, we just did that one. I only had a 5-man team. We did the one crop circle. And she said, in the next field, there's your other crop circle. Now, there was a big hill separating the 2 fields. So that was like a screen. So we couldn't see the other team and they couldn't see us. And we didn't know about them and they didn't know about us. And that's at the point where I think there's something to this. There's some sort of engineering going on here. And that's where I really started to go down the rabbit hole and start to really think about what was going on. And we're not sure if there's telepathy between the makers or if we're speaking within the collective consciousness or if we're triangulating with something else. That's where we are.
Yeah, it almost seems to me that's exactly what's happening. And again, I think I'd kind of told you when we had talked, several weeks ago when we were talking about having you on the show, and I've said several times here recently in shows that Ben and I sit at this wonderful intersection where we get all these different really cool people that have had experiences in a very specific niche area. Like yours is crop circles. Someone else is maybe UFO phenomenon. Someone else will be sleep paralysis or night terrors or things like that. And we have all these different avenues come in, and it's funny how everything kind of comes to a centralized congruency point, which is some kind of spiritual phenomenon.
Yeah.
And a lot of times dark spiritual phenomenon. Yeah. So not to say that this is a dark spiritual phenomenon, but I would kind of lean, maybe it's something is a little strange going on. Now, a lot of questions already from what you have shared with us. You had mentioned, I'll go back to the top of I was jotting down notes as you were talking. You had mentioned that you guys have experienced, one of the phenomenons you have experienced when you are going through this is time shift. How much of the time does that actually happen when involved with some of this creation?
Well, the first thing to say is that these time anomalies, they're not just for crop circle makers. Okay, I've got friends that are friends now, and they've said they've gone to visit crop circles, and they're part of a day out, and the coach drivers said, "All right, I'll be back in 2 hours," and then they're in the crop circle for what they think is 10 minutes, and the coach is there, and they're going, well, why is he back so early? And then they look at the watches, and then obviously 2 hours have passed. But we had a situation where we made two strange things happened. We made a crop circle, and the second that we started to make it, this pink light came across, blinked on above us, right in the center, right above us. And somebody said, well, that's obviously a chopper. We're in trouble, because the military do take an interest. So you do often see patches and military aircraft around crop circles. And a lot of military bases are around where crop circles are made as well, which we're not sure if that's a coincidence. And anyway, so we saw this light and we realized that it wasn't a chopper, because there was no sound and there was no rotor blades and there was nothing at the end of it. And that pink light was there until the end, and then blinked off the second we stopped making it. Now, what happened was some idiot on the team had actually got the tape the wrong way round, and instead of marking out in feet, he marked it out in meters. And we didn't realize until far too late that we were making a crop circle 3 times the size that it should have been. Okay,
Yeah.
there were only 1, 2, 3. There were 4 of us in the team. It wasn't going to happen, but you can't leave a circle unfinished. So sometimes when you make a mistake like that, you can like change the design and just you can get away with it. But there was enough of it actually already drawn out where we could not get away with it. So it was a futile task, and we knew that we were really near the road as well. So we knew that when the light came up, there'd be cars; they could see the whole thing. We were really panicking, and it got to about because you start making about 10 o'clock because that's when that's when the night comes, and then your eyes become accustomed to the darkness very quickly, but it's still your cloak. So you've got between 10 and 3 to get the thing done. I think we got to about 1:45, and we were like not even a quarter of the way through. All right. And and then it got to like 2:45, and we were still way, way off. And one of us said, "What I wouldn't give for more time," which was echoing the sentiments of all of us. And we worked for another hour, guys. Okay. And it was still dark. And then we worked for another half hour, guys, and it was still dark. And then I said to one of the team, "What time is it?" And they said, "It's 3:10." I said, "That's impossible because I asked you and it was 2:45, and that was like an hour and a half, 2 hours ago." And we got the crop circle finished. And when we finished it, that's when the pink lights went off. But it's also when day broke. Okay, and I've never been able to understand that because even from a mathematical point of view, even if you don't believe the story, we know that 4 of us could not have made that crop circle in that time because it is physically impossible, and yet we managed it, and we had this elongated nighttime. And I've never been able to understand it. And I know it sounds crazy. I know, but I experienced it. And one of the people on the team was somebody who's not particularly a believer in the paranormal aspects of crop circle making. And to this day, she says, "That gives me goosebumps now."
Yeah, and I remember some of this is coming back to me too from when we had discussed before, but time shift is a very normal phenomenon for a lot of people that have experienced some kind of, UAP or UFO activity or an abduction, event or something like that is always a very prevalent feature that it happens a lot of times with folks in that, that realm that those things happen to.
Yeah, exactly. I know that. Yeah.
Yeah. What you had made an interesting comment I want to dive into. You said, you can't leave a circle or a design unfinished. Why is that? Like that was such an emphasis point for you. What's the reason behind that?
Well, it's like the cardinal rule for all of us. They say, don't take on anything that you can't finish, and the short answer, I suppose, would be, and this is where things, there's a dichotomy, there's like this paradox. Okay, we have to make crop circles look as if they're not man-made, because if they look as if they're man-made, there's no potency or magic in them. Okay, now what I mean by that is if people perceive a crop circle to be made by people, they will not be interested in it, and therefore it's not, if you like, activated. Okay, so the short answer is, if it's not finished and it can be seen to be not finished, that crop circle is not seen as a real crop circle.
Yeah, you just made another interesting comment I want to ask you about. You said not. You think of the same thing too?
Yeah.
Not activated. What do you mean by that?
What we mean is that once the crop circle's made, and this is also very important, the reason, apart from the fact that it's illegal, why I don't want to be identified is because if I pin myself to any of these crop circles, okay, the second that authorship is admitted, the potency goes. Now, what we say is that people that visit crop circles afterwards, who are believers, who believe the crop circle not to be man-made, will have a spiritual, magical experience that wouldn't have occurred had they believed it to be man-made. Indeed, they probably wouldn't even visit it if they perceived it to be man-made, okay? Because, as I said, we are the villains of the piece. They look upon crop circle makers with the same disdain as I did before I realized that something else was going on. So when we say activated, it means that they are able to give people their spiritual experiences because the people believe that they are something else, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. That kind of leads me to yet another question of why do you think there is such a huge push to like discredit crop circles, crop circle makers, all just the whole phenomenon in general? Why do you think that is?
When you say discredit, can you just elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, I think like you seemingly, kind of had that thought as well, that it was just, a bunch of people out there screwing around trying to make people think it's something else other than, man-made stuff, and it goes back into here, at least in the States, back when, and we're all relatively about the same age, when we were growing up, there was a huge push and a huge effort made to discredit people who are trying to claim that they have had some kind of paranormal experience, UAP, UFO experience, abduction experience, whatever the case is. And now, as we move into 2025, it's pretty much like the cat's out of the bag. Yeah. And they don't even really hide it anymore. It's like, yeah, these things are happening. And now we have the military and the government stepping forward and saying, yeah, we've even experienced it. And here's video from our, jets and our destroyers and our boats, and high-tech military equipment has captured this stuff. So it just seems like this to me, in my mind, and if I'm off here, I want you to say it, please. It seems to me this was a part of that and has been largely tried to been attacked and tried to be discredited, I guess is the only word I can come to, or debunked or whatever. So that's kind of what my question is.
Well, we had the two circuit makers that you're probably aware of, that they were called Doug and Dave in the 90s, and they were the guys that were really wheeled out to say that they were responsible for all the crop circles. Okay. And that really did put the kibosh on it, because up until that point, people were, I think even our royal family were interested. I know that Prince Philip was interested, Prince Charles was interested. People were very, very interested. And suddenly these two guys come out and say, we did them all. Okay. This is the other thing. They were very, very, very basic circles that they were making. Okay. And like you say, the mystery, the whole thing just disappeared. Yeah. But crop circles in their intricacy increased, because obviously the people that were making them were getting better at what they were doing. Okay. And they got tricks that they could use. You'd find a trick, some little design you could make, and then you could incorporate into next year's season, because the season only runs from April to September. So we spend the rest of the time, we've got like 8 or 9 months to do our planning, okay, or receive our messages, if that's your way of thinking, okay. But it seemed where the dictonomy is that as the crop circles have got more and more and more complicated, what we can't understand is why the believers will not take on board that it's only because the artists have got better at what they're doing.
Okay,
interesting.
Like you said, you design you'll draw it up before you go out, and then you do it. And then I was stuck back when he said that, he had two were designed at the same night. Yeah. And was it similar to that one, or was it totally different? Like what you made over on the other side of you said on one side of the hill, and somebody else made something. Were they similar, or were they totally different designs?
In my dream were two completely different designs. I couldn't decide which one to do.
Okay.
So I let my free will, or I emptied my mind and thought, okay, I'll go with whatever comes. That was my first crop circle. The one that appeared in the other field was exactly the other one that I dreamt, which was completely different.
Okay.
Interesting. And have you found any rhyme or reason for the difference in designs? Do they, in your mind, trigger different things, or what's the rationale behind that?
You'd have to speak to the crop circle design. See, sometimes what happens is somebody will make a design, stick it in a field, and then through the jungle drums, because there's this myth that all the crop circle makers know each other. We don't. There's all the time. They come from different parts of the country, but somebody will make a design, and then another team will get in touch maybe a couple of months later when they found out who they are and said, Where did you steal our design from? We were just about to do that." And
Hmm.
they hadn't, you know. So sometimes you'll find that there's a design which complements the area. So Stonehenge, you'll see a yin yang, or you'll, through the Neolithic sites, you'll see crop circles which give reverence to the area in which they're placed. You do see a lot of recurring themes, okay, but there's no hard and fast rule. Sometimes you'll find a recurring theme one season because somebody thought, that's a nice trick, I'll put that in mine. But the other school of thought says they're all the same, but why? Because how do we know the circle makers were even looking? You know,
Mhm.
this is where we start to think about, is there something else at play? So I'll give you another example. What we had a situation once where we were going to make swallows, and I was the only one on the team that was a greenhorn. I was new, so the crop circle leader, the team leader, spent most of the day mentoring me on what I had to do, because obviously I was the weakest link. If anything was going to go wrong, it would be my doing, which is on him. So we were going to do swallows. And then the second we got to the field, he sat bolt upright in the car and said, "We're doing spirals." I said, "We can't do spirals. I don't know what I'm doing. I spent all day with you in the pub just drawing this thing out." "No, we're doing spirals." So we went to the field, made these spirals. What happened there, that was something that was a bit strange there, was that we've got tram lines in the field, which is like these straight lines that go across the field where the farm vehicles, drive. And I had the construction line. So you've got a construction line, then you board within the construction line. So I was halfway around, and then I realized to my horror that I'd actually started stomping alongside the tram line instead. So I'd lost my way. The whole circle was messed up. And I looked behind me, and it was rectified. The mistake I'd made wasn't there anymore. And I thought, that's really strange. So anyway, the next day the circle was good. We went to the internet cafe because there was no Wi-Fi in those days, and yeah, and every time a crop circle was reported, sometimes you'd tip somebody off. You'd phone a named person, say, "You might want to fly your plane over this field, you might find something." Okay.
Mm.
And then it's reported, and then it goes online. So we went to the internet cafe, we went on the Crop Circle Connector website, and then we found our circle, and we went, "That's a bit strange, the filter on the camera must be wrong," because we were making in green, in golden wheat. This is in green wheat. And then we said, "Well, that site's normally really good. That's a really rookie error." And then we looked at the location, and somebody had made an identical circle on the same night as us, within the same hours, no more than 10 to 15 miles away. And that's where you start to think, is it our design? What's
Or is it
happening?
being put in your mind? Yeah.
What's happening? So that's why, in a convoluted way, I'm getting back to your question.
No, that's
We
fine.
don't know. We don't know
Mhm.
about you say you pick a certain design. How do you pick it? It's out of our hands, or you think you've thought of it. And another example, this is ridiculous. I drew out a pattern which meant nothing. And I drew it out on the back of a cigarette packet in the van, and I thought, well, that means nothing. So if we get it wrong, no one's got anything to like compare it to. It's not like a Masonic symbol or anything.
Yeah.
And so we made this formation in the field, and it was, as I said, just something I'd made up. Next day, we went to breakfast in the cafe very close to the field, and we had those like school dinner school benches where you have to budge up and somebody sits down. This guy said, budge up. And I looked at his shirt and he had my design all over his shirt. And that's when you think, what's happening?
Yeah, right.
Why did I think of that? Why is he sitting here now? If I'd have gone somewhere else for breakfast, would he be there? What does it all? This is the question. We don't know what it all means, guys. We've got the jigsaw. We've got the jigsaw pieces. We can fit them together, but we don't know what it means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow. Okay, so I should have said this in the beginning, but if you guys are just now tuning in and you listen to us, we're actually talking to Citizen D today, who has a lot of experience when it comes to crop circles, and we're having a really fantastic conversation with him. If you want to find out more about him, if you're listening to the show and you want to find out more, go check out his Substack. It Can't Be People, no spaces, so It Can't Be People .substack.com, and you can actually find out more about his work, and you can sign up and get updates as he finds out more information. So okay, so another question, man. So many. I've been like power typing over here while you're talking, man.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No. Don't be sorry. This is fantastic, man. You giving me more questions. Don't be sorry for that. So you seem like you have one.
Well, I think it's already up there. So
go ahead, fire away.
Steel.
Yeah.
Do you think, well, I want to get back to like how they are subconsciously connected, these groups.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you think, what do you think that is?
Yeah.
It's a sort of thing. Listen, there's two, as far as I can see, there's two possibilities. Either we are subliminally speaking to each other telepathically, and I don't mean by that, I just mean the collective unconsciousness in the species field. Okay, we are, because, and this is the other thing, guys. It's important.
My wife and I do it with each other all the time. No, I'm dead serious that we really do that because
I totally understand.
We have such a strong connection. You probably do it with your wife, I bet.
Yeah, absolutely right. Now, this actually goes into people that make crop circles. A lot of us have a latent interest in the paranormal, okay? And I'm not for a second saying, in fact, I'm denying we are not special, we're not anointed, we're not chosen ones. It seems to be that the phenomenon hooks onto people that are aligned to it, okay? So a lot of the crop circle artists that I know, a lot of crop circle makers that I know, have all got a lot of interest in the paranormal. They're very much aligned to it. So we don't know if the strength of that belief is enough to like cause a transmission between us, which is unconscious, or whether there is something else at play, okay, which is using the same frequencies. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware of the work of John Keel, the ufologist. But what he basically says is that if you think of it as a radio, okay, and you've got your needle on one of those old-fashioned radios and you're tuned into a station, that's not to say that no other stations exist. It means you're only stuck on that station, okay? So what we're saying is either we think we're actually on the same station as each other, but we also think that possibly something else uses that station as well. So we don't know if we're actually talking to each other or if it's, like I said at the beginning, if there's a triangulation effect and there's something else going on above us, you know?
Yeah. Have you guys ever done an EMF reading when you've been doing it, or like a voice recording, like what they do with ghosts and things, and talk to them to see if anything responds?
No, but when I said to you before about crop circles being active, you know, it's important to realize that the stuff you're talking about can be recorded after we've been there. Now, crop circle sites are crime scenes in that obviously it's illegal to make them, but they're also, the parallels are there in that you've got to get in quick. Because if you get in after too many other visitors, it's been contaminated. So those first few hours are important. So if you go to a crop circle and say, oh, this must be man-made because there's footprints all over it. No, that's just the guys that were there before you an hour ago. Okay. To answer your question, I know of some crop circle researchers that have gone into crop circles when they've been fresh a day. Okay. and they've recorded like metallic noises and trilling noises. It's on tape. They've had it, and they've recorded the stuff that you're talking about. But then the believers say, well, that's just proof it's not man-made. It's not. They are man-made. It's just happening in man-made circles. So it's too much, because people say, oh, do you film yourself doing them? No, we're too busy. We can't be going around, we've got enough to do. We've got enough to
Yeah.
do. And also, why would we film ourselves? Because that, again, that's claiming authorship. And if you don't believe it, then you're not going to believe it anyway. Okay. So the stuff you're talking about is perfectly valid to be done the next day for as long as the circle's fresh, and it has been done. And people will go into crop circles and their mobile phone batteries will die. The camera, in the old days when we had the old cameras with the chunky batteries in them, the batteries would die. And I've seen that stuff happening in crop circles that my friends have made. We've gone in the next day, they've been packed full of people, and the people's phones have been flattening and the batteries have been draining to nothing. So you don't have to be there the night for that stuff to occur. You can still have it when it's fresh.
Do you see when you guys are done with one of these and you're finished in this afterwards? Do you see, obviously, yes, it's a crime scene, which would, obviously the authorities are going to come and take a look, which that makes sense. But do you see an increased amount of military activity around these sites afterwards
It's
as
deeper
well?
than that, guys. In the where we make in the ancient sites, like the pagan sites, and like Stonehenge, Avebury, around the Henges, why is there's always military bases, okay, and they're always on the doorstep. So whenever there's like historic Neolithic sites, there's always a bloody Air Force base down there. So yeah, I've been in crop circles where they buzzed us, and they've like really. First of all, you think is it a prank? Because I've heard that people say that they use them as GPS markers, because obviously they use them for if you've got a load of helicopters, riding around the countryside, it does become boring after a while. So they just say, "Oh, go to this GPS point, report what you find," and it's a crop circle. But yeah, I used to have footage of a brand new crop circle which a friend had made. I was a believer then, so I didn't know. I thought it was aliens then. And there was this crop circle just landed. this massive great Chinook came down. But we also had a situation which I only remembered recently, where we went to make a crop circle 10 years ago, and the design we had was like a stealth, okay? But we didn't realize until we looked at it afterwards, that's a stealth bomber. It was like an outline. We started to make it, guys, and we saw this light, like this pink light, and it was just after we'd done that other one with the time thing. And I thought, oh, Christ, there's another UFO there. And this thing got bigger and bigger, and then we heard, and then we realized it was a chopper. It landed where it was coming down as if to land where we were making the crop circle, and we just dropped the kit and we ran. And I think we were in such a panic that we didn't collect. I think we had to collect the boards and the tape the next day, because we just dropped and ran. And I said to my friend, how did I know we were here? They said, well, where we've stopped the car down the road, they've probably got the heat seeking and they can probably see the engine still warm, So the answer is yes. And I've seen it time and time again. There's been crop circles in the military, but you're not sure if they're just having a laugh, because sometimes they wave, but you're not. But sometimes you think, why are you? Yeah, and it's not a coincidence, guys. They are right above you. They are there for that.
What is the qualification? Because you've talked a lot about these groups and teams. How does one get into one of these groups, and like what are the qualifications for that? Did I steal your question?
There's no qualifications. You don't. There's no diploma. There's no school.
Yeah.
I just got lucky because somebody heard me saying, I'm not really bothered about how they've got there. I'm more concerned about what they do once they're there with the activation. But I'm also interested in all this supernatural stuff that you're talking about. Okay. So what generally happens is somebody will join the team and then they just learn the ropes and then they'll go out and do it, and then somebody else to join them, and then it's a cycle and cycle. So if I was to sort of count the amount of crop circles makers there've been over the years, it probably runs into thousands. Okay.
Sure.
And this is another key thing. People say, "Oh, that's a crap circle because it's really, really bad." Okay, what you've got to remember is that we're not like a rock and roll band. We can't just like rehearse really badly in the garage and only do a gig when we're ready. Okay. Yeah, we
You
get
get one shot at this, man.
Our rehearsal room, our rehearsal garage is the field. So your first crop circles, unless you've been mentored and gone out with a good team when you've done it a few times, your first circle is going to be absolutely rubbish unless you go really basic. But then when the teams get better, the people that were laughing, at those crop circles, a few years later, they're marveling at the work those same teams have done and saying it's the real thing because they've had 2 years experience, under their belts.
Now, when you do it, does it damage the crops at all?
It does. It does. Now there is this mythology about, you can tell the difference between a man-made crop circle and an alien crop circle because the nodes are exploded and the stems are bent, not broken. But it's all based on this study that was done a few years ago, which never passed scientific peer review. But unfortunately, because it's what people want to hear, they just believe it. But yeah. What happened was a friend of mine was actually one of the scientists that they actually gave the papers to, and he was gagged for 10 years. He only started talking about it in 2019. He was gagged by the institute because he said, you've used all the wrong controls. You've not taken into account phototropism, which is where if a plant is laid onto the ground, its natural instinct is to follow and reach back up to the sun again.
It's like how a tree grows.
And also, what you've also done is for your samples, you've taken standing crop rather than flattened crop. All your controls are wrong, but people believe it because it fits in with their narrative. So it does damage the crop. Now they can normally, when they get the combines out, they can sometimes scrape under and get it, but it does damage the crop. But what's really important to tell you, it's the farmers will tell you, it's not the crop circles that they get angry about. It's the people that fuck up their crop afterwards. Okay, the visitors that go in their coach loads. They said they do far much more damage than the crop circle makers do. And also, when we go to make a crop circle, we will go into the tram lines and then we'll actually stomp, and we take big steps over the crop. So it looks as if there's no way. We don't like go in single file. We take big steps and we fluff it over behind us. These visitors will just go in and just bulldoze.
Yeah,
they don't go through the tram lines, guys. They just bulldoze through the field, and they do infinitely more damage than we do. And the farmer will say, it's my land. And then I'll say, no, it belongs to everybody, because they're like...
No, it really doesn't. That's why it's illegal.
I'll come around to I'll do it in your back garden then, shall I?
Right, yeah. But it belongs to us all. Your yard is now my yard. It belongs to all of us.
I wish there were some crop circles around here.
Yeah, we're boring. Nobody wants to summon anything around here, so we already have enough, stuff going on anyway, I guess. But that was one question that I did ask you in the prelude to the show, just as we were talking, the several weeks prior, that I want to bring up here just to kind of get it out there. Is I had asked you just because from our standpoint, being more the spiritual standpoint and looking at the supernatural and having very open minds for that stuff, and which is you're kind of on that line too. Yeah. From the supernatural aspect of it. But have you had or seen any kind of occult, involvement in this process? Is it no more than normal, one-off stuff, or what's been in your experience?
I'm not sure if this applies, but this is a strange example that I had in a crop circle that I was involved in. Now, this is a really important point. People say not fake or real, okay? We've got our own definition, some of us, of what's a fake circle and what's a real circle. A real circle is one that's made with respect for the land. It's made for no pretense. It's made because we're compelled to do it for whatever reason that we don't understand, and we are doing it with respect to the area that we're placing in. And what you find is a lot of the paranormal experiences that I've described, they only seem to be within these like sacred sites. Okay. A fake crop circle is something that's made with bad intent, or it's done to trick or fool people. It's done as a piece of art, which is okay. It's okay, but it's not, it doesn't hold the same sort of enigma, or it's done with malicious intent. Okay. Now, it wasn't in the design, but I went to a crop circle uh some years ago. It was in the blazing heat. It was a beautiful day, blazing sunshine. And the thing with Wiltshire is that if it wasn't for your car, you could look around and you could be at any point within the last 3,000 years. It's only like your car and like the modern stuff that it's timeless. So I walked into this crop circle, and as I was walking in, I had this terrible, terrible feeling of foreboding, as if it was like
Hmm.
I remember thinking, I wonder what is actually behind this rather than the people. Who's the real architect? And the second I started to have those thoughts, I had this terrible, terrible feeling, and it was really strong. And the vibe I got was, how dare you, even think you're worthy of answering that question. And as I walked further into the crop circle, I developed nausea. And at one point, I actually felt as if I'd been whacked around the back of the head. Okay, I thought it was sunstruck. I didn't know what it was. I ventured further in. It got worse and worse and worse. I had this malevolent, horrible feeling, and I walked out of the crop circle because I didn't have the guts to walk into it. Even I was so scared. But I thought, and as I started to walk out, the feeling dissipated. It was all right. So I walked out, and it got better and better. And then I thought, well, it's a sunny day. Nothing dark can hit me today because it's a summer's day. That psychological thing where it's not gothic because it's in the afternoon and it's blazing sun. So,
Right,
so
right.
I walked back into the. It was like you again. It was like, yeah, really, and it was worse than before. And then I felt as if I'd been hit again, and I had like this. God, what was that? Why am I? I checked for blood. I think it's back in my head. It sounds crazy, honestly.
Yeah.
And then I went back and thought again. Oh, it's just you imagining it. So I ran back into it, and then suddenly I got this terrible, horrible, almost evil feeling, and I thought, I'm not supposed to be here, and I went. Now, I'm not sure if that happened because I had the gall to ask that question mentally, or if there was something within that circle that was wrong, you know. And I did
Yeah.
actually speak to somebody else, and I said, "Did you go to Addington?" He went, "Yeah." I said, "What did you think?" The thing with this, you don't ask leading questions. What did you think of it, R? He said, "I didn't like that one at all." I said, I don't think I went into it even, you
Hmm.
know? And then you got to think, was there something in the intent there? Or is this, see, sometimes you've got to think, if it is intent, was it on the intent of the crop circle maker, or was something else at play there, which maybe shouldn't have been playing with him, you know?
Yeah, right. Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
So when you say ultimately, now we've got an hour of fantastic questions. We come full circle back to the name of your blog, all right, which is It Can't Be People. So after you've had all these experiences and you've had all these things that you've seen and heard, and just I'm sure we've probably not even gotten into all of it today. There's no way. What do you mean when you say it can't be people for you?
What it
What does
means is
that mean
this.
to you?
And I just got to go back for a little bit there. Sometimes you see, I've never seen a design which is absolutely outwardly evil. Okay. you see, I've seen a swastika, but it was actually done in the original Sanskrit Indian sense, when it was before Hitler turned it the other way around,
Yeah, right.
I don't think I've ever seen. Yeah.
Incidentally, I'll pause you really quick. That symbol is still used today in a lot of places around the world. Actually, one of the most famous is the Falun Gong in China. Actually, use that, and they're heavily persecuted by the Chinese Communist Party. So
Yeah, there's a hotel in southern Indiana that has it.
Yes, there is. They've covered it, I think.
Yes, it's down in
French Lick.
Yes,
Yeah.
we were there one day, and I'm with them.
Well, the one-
we're like,
The one I
whoa.
Yeah. I just say that because I know that there's a tremendous stigma, not just here, but all throughout the world, that the minute you see that symbol, it means the Nazis. And it's like, no, it
Yeah.
doesn't. So
No,
that's why
okay.
I just wanted to
No,
stop
that's
you really
okay.
quick. So sorry
And
about that.
also the edges were like rounded as well. It wasn't like the straight right angles that you see,
Yeah.
Yeah, I've forgotten the question, guys. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Well, it was just ultimately, it can't be
okay.
people. What does that
So
mean to you?
what it means is this: when I walked into my first crop circle, when I had that slight time distortion, and I thought, God, because it was nightfall. I thought, God, why is it night now? I've only been here for 10 minutes or something. And anyway, I looked around at the construction, and like the edges were like razor sharp, and I just looked around, and the strange thing was, when I walked into that crop circle, even though it shouldn't have been there, where it was planted, which was near the Avery Stone Circle, right next to it, you had this sense as if it was it just looked completely natural within the landscape. Okay. And I had this serene feeling of, this reminds me of something which I've forgotten. Now, what I think I meant by that was that I think mankind has forgotten it. It was like I'd answer. I thought, I know what this means now, but it was just beyond my grasp, and it was really annoying because I thought this makes sense, but I think it's made sense ancestrally. Okay, because what we say is that when we make the crop circles, in some ways we think that we're rebooting the work of our forebears that made the stone circles and made the Neolithic monuments. We're just doing the same without the heavy lifting, and our stuff stays there for 6 weeks. Theirs stays there for 6,000 years.
You're just lazier.
That's right.
I'm kidding, man.
I've got sciatica. I can't go out of a bad back. So, yes,
Amen, brother. We appreciate it.
So anyway, I looked around the crop circle, and I just looked around and said to my partner, but mainly to myself, it can't be people. And but knowing what I know now, you can interpret that as being 100% right or 100% wrong, because it is people making them, but it can't be people actually behind the design or behind the bigger picture. But also it means that the people that even have the evidence in front of them now that says they must be man-made, okay, they still say, well, it can't be people, because they don't want it to be people. But we still think that those early single circles from the 80s, guys, and they've been recorded a lot earlier than the 80s. We don't know what they are. We think that those single circles that started the mystery are still, a lot of them are still, and they still crop up. I've seen crop circles that people aren't interested in. They don't even get reported because they just look like crop damage, yeah.
They're not
and
intricate.
Obviously the world that we're living in now is that they just want bling. So people are demanding more of the supernatural now. They want it in high definition. They want the whistles and bells.
Yeah.
But I've seen crop circles that are just little more than wind damage, but the crop is bent halfway up. And you're thinking, well, nobody can do that with a board. It's impossible. So we still think there's an air of mystery there. And we also think with those single crop circles, some of us say, were they put there by something else, by something that's not human, as a way of like throwing down the gauntlet for us to pick up and say, I can do better than that. And then it floods in and uses us as like it's conduits, so to speak, without being, I'm going to say it again, we're not special, we're just aligned to it. It's almost as if when you hear messages of like messages coming through clairvoyance, and spirit says, well, it's very weak, it's taken me so much effort to get here, and then they're pulled away. It's almost as if they've made this single circle and only had enough energy exerted to do that. But it's like a recruitment drive for us to come in and say, well, we can actually do this with boards, and we can actually make pretty patterns. And then it goes, yeah, thanks for that, because I can now actually work through you.
Yeah. What do you ultimately think that like the supernatural element of this, the entity or whatever it is, the entities that are kind of propelling this forward and using you guys or whatever the case is, what do you think that they're doing this for? Like, what's the ultimate use for these designs in these circles?
What's important to realize is that I've explained to you the UAPs that we see. I explained the magnesium flares. I explained the pink lights. But what you've got to remember is that we get these supernatural and paranormal high strangeness events. They seem to be concentrated and like provoked by crop circles, but they've always been there. So history has always recorded in these areas UAPs. What we called them, we used to call them sprites or will-o'-the-wisps. It was the same thing. It was still lights. It was still orbs. But it seems to be that where our ancestors used to say, well, he's away with the fairies. The fairies have taken him, and he's come back 2 days later. We now say that's a UFO abduction with missing time. So we don't know whether the I prefer not to say entities. I prefer to say a higher power. We're not sure if this higher power is manifesting itself in this way, that we recognize it as being UFO related, when really it's been with us since our inception, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. One of the questions I had written down actually quite a bit earlier, and I wanted to get your take on this. Are you familiar with the Nazca lines?
Of course I am, yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the things I thought of as you were talking and talking about, we have a tendency to want to think, oh, this is new stuff. It's only been around for 40 years or so. And much to your point on the ancestry kind of thing, do you feel like maybe where you had mentioned Stonehenge or, whatever the case is, where they're trying to use different building materials in order to do this, do you see that too as just a kind of a old school extension? No, I guess not an extension because it would be before you guys.
I'm totally with you. I don't know if you get them over there, but I'm a fan of a band called Killing Joke. They're huge over here, okay? And the singer is really into his esoterics, and he said that he is actually I think he went within the belly of the abdomen of the spider in the NASA lines, and he said he thought it was a portal. Okay. He said something. It seemed to open up, something for him. So absolutely, I think that the same intention that made those is the same intention that made our crops, our stone circles, and we've like inherited that tradition. But as I said, without the heavy lifting, and that the Nazca lines and the stone circles were there to base as markers to commemorate the fact that they knew that something was special about that particular area. And again, it gets back to the crop circles. It activates it, okay, through the imagery and through the fact that we are also using sacred and ancient geometry as well. So absolutely, Marx is yes to that.
I pulled that up just so everybody could see what we're talking about. I believe these are down in Peru, in South America. I believe so. But this is the spider that was actually drawn in the ground. You can actually see here. And these are like, how old do they think they are? Like a couple thousand years old, almost, something like that. Maybe 1,500 something, something along those lines. You had mentioned something else that as you've been talking this whole time. Now, obviously, this is just, I want to get your take on this. I know what my take is, but from the minute you and I started talking and you started describing all these to me, even before, and then even more so today, it almost seems like what is happening is there's like a portal that's being opened.
Yeah.
Do you feel like maybe that's what is happening?
Yeah, I do. I do, and it's not just me. A lot of us think the same thing, and we think that when we actually are making the crop circles and visiting as well, that's really important. We don't have to be, makers. We are actually entering a theatre where stuff can happen that you wouldn't believe would happen in any other sphere. Now, that's not necessary to me. That's not necessary. It's like Skinwalker. It'd be nice to
Yeah.
see it. I don't want to take it home with me.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. We see that they are. We're not creating portals. We're just basically, as I said, all we're doing is like if you look at it this way, stone circles, crop circles. It's like they're jump leads, guys. It's like they're like there's a power. It's like rebooting a power that's already there. We just basically they're like batteries, if you like. The power's already there, but it doesn't hurt to put some sacred geometry on top of it, But then you're back to the rabbit hole. See, sometimes we'll go and make a circle in a certain area. The car will break down, and we'll make it here instead. And then we find out later where we've made it as a mistake is vastly more significance to the place we were going to put it in. And then you think, how far do you go without thinking? At what point was that decision not ours? We make mistakes with crop circles, and we find out that mistake is the most important part of the crop circle to that area or to somebody that's in the area looking at them. And then we go, at what point of what is design and what is an accident and what's a mistake? We just don't know.
Do you think, the group, as they're working together doing this, that I don't know the best way to describe, like, their energy, or they're all working together for this one thing, that is their energy or their soul or whatever is producing this, and they're all together, and it can call something.
Yeah,
Almost like a seance.
Yes.
If they are all of that same mindset, because this is interesting. We had a crop circle once where we had a couple of girls that were tourists. They wanted to tag along and be with us, and I wasn't happy with bringing them along. I said to the team leader, by that time I was like joint. I said, these could be journalists. We don't know these girls from Adam. And they were going there just to see the spooky stuff. There was no reverence there at all. It was like, let's go and see the supernatural theater. And we went to make the crop circle, and what you think is really fascinating, it's not. Okay, it's just 5 or 6 people milling about. The first hour is spent measuring it out, and the rest of it is just people just stomping on corn. Okay, it's not interesting. It's interesting for 10 minutes. Honestly, let me tell you, it's not interesting. And then one of the girls said about 2:00 in the morning, after she'd been sitting there for 3 hours, "Oh, this is boring. Where's the spooky stuff?" And the second that she said that, behind her, this corkscrew appeared 100 foot above her, the size of like a juggernaut. And it was like, I'll never forget it. It was a pink corkscrew with turquoise. It was solid. And it went spiraled behind the ridge, gone. The whole event took 2 seconds. And like, she was the only one who didn't see it. And like, our team leader said, well, you treat it like it's not here to play hocus pocus for you. It's not doing party tricks, And it's like the sentience was aware. So the answer to your question is, if everyone is of that same mindset, then yes. But more importantly, it's not about us. It's about what happens the next day. Like I said to you at the beginning, it's ours when we're making it. It's not ours anymore the second we leave that field. So what you're talking about is actually more instilled in the people that visit it, that then leave their residual spirituality. This sounds crazy, but it's like the believers go in there with positive experiences, and then it builds and builds and builds and builds. So we're just like the builders, or whatever's above us is the builders. But what's just as important is what happens when the believers walk in over the oncoming weeks before it gets cut out.
Okay. Yeah. You've talked about the next day. What is it about the next day that is so activating?
Well, there's 2 things. The the two things to remember is that it's more pure. You can actually get more out of it the first day because it's not been trampled to death. It goes from like divine to demolition within the space of a few hours
because of all the people.
If especially if it's in a popular spot that's easy to park near, easy to get to. But it just seems to be that the fresher it is, you get more out of it. But then there's people who argue and say, well, I went back to, people I know have said, well, I went back 3 weeks later and I still had the same experience in there. I still had a positive experience. And I argued, I said, well, Rob, could it be that, that's because it's been instilled there with the people going after you? He said, no, I really felt I had the same feeling on day one as I did in day 21. And then obviously, then they're cut. Sometimes what happens the following year is because there's been so many visitors and the seeds have been trampled through the pattern. The next year, the crops, whatever the crop is, the next year will actually come through, and then you'll see a transfer of the previous year's pattern where the previous seeds have been trampled in, and they're called ghosts. They're called ghosts, but it's nothing supernatural. It's just like
explaining what it looks like.
Yeah,
like a faint trace of what happened.
That's cool.
Yeah, they are. They're really cool. And I knew somebody that was going to make a crop circle. Again, he had this design, and then he went to make it, and a week before he was about to do it, the ghost of the previous years had come up, and it was the same bloody thing he was going to put down. And he's going, well, that means that somebody's had this idea before me. Why there? And in all the thousands of fields in Wiltshire, why there? Why was I going to put it there? And then you think again, you're down the rabbit hole again.
Yeah, we had kind of talked about this before we hit record today, pre-show, and we get into these good discussions pre-show, and then we kind of like cut it off because it's like, no, save it for the show. And one of the things we talked about was ley lines, right? Well, and that's not something that we're very familiar with now, modern day, but the ancients and our ancestors seem to know a lot about it and draw power from the earth in these ancient ley lines that seemingly run and through the whole planet. And one of them actually runs right through Stonehenge, where you've been a lot. Do you think that has anything to do ultimately with where you guys are drawn to do these things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they say that Avebury is the most concentrated crossover point in Europe of the ley lines, but even if you don't believe them in ley lines, I can tell you this, guys. If you went to Avebury and there was no crop circles there, and there was nothing there's nothing exists that I'm talking to you about now, you would still go, I feel something. There's something there. There's something there. It's magical. And it's there whether the crop circles are there or not, but it just seems to be that we exacerbate them. But yeah, a lot of crop circle makers that I know would absolutely be bang on with that. And they say it's all connected with the Michael line. Yeah, absolutely. The answer is total yes. As I said before, I've spoken to during the course of my interviews and interviewing other crop circle makers, because obviously I know a lot of them. I've interviewed people that have made crop circles outside the area and abroad in Italy and France. They said there's nothing to report. I said, have you got anything at all that you can tell me that I can put in my Substack? Anything that's strange, anything that's out of the ordinary? Nothing. It's just here.
You're just boring Italians. Keep making spaghetti.
I'm not going to take it now. Then.
Anything here in America? Anything that you've had from the American side?
Well, America, I don't think. No, I don't think.
It's not something that's really front page news over here ever.
Yeah.
There's been a couple, but I don't think you got the right crop. I mean, you see like grass circles, but no. I've seen that there's been a few, but then this is another thing. you got to remember, we have tourists making them. They come over here, they learn the ropes, and then they go, and we go, that's funny. That design's in France now. I wonder where he got that idea from. Oh, he was out with us last year.
Just like the French stealing everything. I heard that one of them, not to go political, just because it's a funny story, but one of the people in the French Parliament was angry, one of the politicians, and he said he was demanding that we return the Statue of Liberty.
I say give it back.
Yeah. I think the response was no.
And me,
It's
if you
ours
want it
now,
back,
sorry.
take it. Yeah, come get it.
You've already got one.
Yeah.
So-
It's green. It's green now. You don't want it green.
yeah, you don't want it back. It's all old and she's all messed up. No, it's all good.
Don't talk to this guy about.
Yeah, I just don't care. I just don't care. His philosophy is, buy the Ferrari, drink the beer, whatever. It's all going to burn anyway.
That's right.
Yeah.
Have you had any other, obviously you've had some things happen while you're in the fields, but have you had anything other supernatural happen to you outside of that? And has it increased since you started doing this stuff?
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah, nothing tangible where you could. You get synchronicities. What I tell you, a really strange thing I just read in my Substack. This is really weird. I'm a guitar player, okay, and I was at home once, and I was just fiddling about, and this riff fell out onto the fell out on the fretboard. I thought that's a cool riff. That's cool. Never heard that before. Maybe I wrote it. Went to the supermarket, guys. It's playing in the supermarket. 10 minutes later, 20 minutes later, and it was a one-hit wonder. It wasn't like a popular song. It's like this, but I listened to the lyrics and I thought, oh my god, that lyric, that'd be a great idea for a crop circle. And then I saw the crop circle in my mind. I knew exactly what it's going to look like. And then this song would not leave me alone. And it was a 1970s song, and it wasn't like it had been remixed or rehashed for a new film. It was like this non-entity of a song. Suddenly it was like that film where everywhere you go there'd be pensioners behind me on the bus whistling it. It was everywhere. It would come up on a quiz night and I'm the only one that gets it. Everywhere, this song already, again, always, only me. And in the end, I relented. I say, all right, I get the message. I'll do the circle, okay? Enough already, all right? And the thing with this situation is you've got to look back and say, right, pretend you're a skeptic and pretend you're a scientist and look at the stats. Is it still weird? Yeah, it's really weird. And then I said, enough already. I'll make the bloody circle. I got a team together. We made the crop circle. I have not heard that record again to this day. It was like, okay, you've done your work. It's gone. So yes, you do get synchronicities that follow you home, or they happen before you go into the fields. I know of a crop circle maker that said that he felt he was being watched in the field, and he said, I didn't feel safe at home for the next few days. He said, I felt as if it was there. And we had a situation once. This is a really weird one. We made a crop circle. We all had the feeling as if there was another member in the field. We couldn't put our fingers on it, but there was something like we were looking around thinking, is that 5 of us or 6 of us? Or like you'd say, well, there's 5 of us. Let me count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, that's good. No, me, that's 6. It's something strange happens. It's like an alteration of reality. And then the next day, we were walking in that crop circle, and I was with a relative. And when we were walking around it, you got the crunch, crunch, crunch of the corn. Every time we stopped crunching, there was like another crunch behind us, as if it was like this bad stalker, mirroring our footsteps, And I said to my cousin, I said, are you hearing that as well? There's something when we walk, it follows. So we walk, then it goes, and then we stop, like you see in like private eye films or something. And then she said, no, you're not imagining that. And she was a skeptic, which is a really good place to be. I like to speak to skeptics as paranormal stuff or strange stuff is happening. And she says, no, there's. And then we both saw this shadow projected across the crop, a human figure, and it was opaque nearly. And of course, the first thing we do is look behind. There's no one there. And that's when I said, I think it's time for us to go now. But what was interesting about that particular circle was that, and this is an interesting point, I went there and took my relative out of ego. Okay, so look what we did last night. It was brilliant. And then the second you do that, it's like saying, know your place. It's like, this is supposed to be done not for us. It's supposed to be done with good intent. It's not about ego or big-headedness or look what I've done. So that was strange because it happened after the event. But you only get stuff at home that's related to synchronicities of the dreams, really, which is preparing for you to go into the fields later. That's my experience anyway.
How often do you have these dreams?
Normally, way before the beginning of the season. And then what will happen is you'll get a reminder dream before, and you go, I think I've dreamt that before. And what's really interesting, when I had that dream where it was the part of Wiltshire that I didn't recognize, I'd been dreaming that for years, that part of Wiltshire. I thought, well, it's not Wiltshire. I know Wiltshire like the back of my hand. That's nowhere near the sites. And then I take a side road and it opens up in this expanse and it's there. So I don't tend to get the dreams too much before season starts. But then there's a residual effect because season finishes in September, and you still feel like there's still strangeness. It's like it's still there with you, you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything weird that's happened in your sleep that you've noticed?
How do you mean? What do you mean?
Like anything other than like maybe having a visions or dreams, or have you had anything else weird that's happened in the middle of the night in your sleep, or seeing any entities
it's not
or anything
connected,
like that?
but when I was younger, I used to have the old hag thing, the thing that's on your chest, and then you think, is that and you wake up and it's still. See, I've had paranormal experiences all my life, and as I said to you, we're not special, but I just wonder if it sometimes targets that. I did have a situation once.
Have you found?
I had a situation once, which is really, as a child, you get the dreams where you have the out of body experiences, and you feel as if you're looking down on yourself. I had this dream where I felt like I was looking down on myself, and it was so vivid, guys. It's like, that's not a dream. It's like I looked around and my room is exactly as it is in normal life, and then I scraped in my dream. I scraped across the wall to try and get back. And then I woke up and I thought I was only a kid. I was about 10. I thought that was too much. And then I looked at the wall and I had a poster and there was a big tear across the poster. And I realized that that's where I was trying to come back. But that happened years before I was interested in this stuff. But my mother was I had a relative who was into spiritualism, so I've always had this latent. I've always had this interest. Always. And when I started to hear the stories of strangeness, I wasn't as surprised as a skeptic would be, because I could say, well, that relates to that and that. Yeah. So yeah, it just.
Do you find that's a common theme with your peers that are doing
again,
this?
we've got to go back to what's a real circle and what's not a real circle. So the people that I know that do it for art, none of them, okay, or they relate the odd instance that they can't explain. But for those of us that are really into it, we tend to report more. Of course, a skeptic would say, well, that's because you're making it up, or because you're just reading too much into it. But I don't know. The people that I know that are sort of more spiritually active, if you like, we do tend to report more stuff than the people that do it for art.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I think that same thing too. Like my mother was very gifted when it came to abilities, to be able to, perceive things, and kind of just naturally more gifted that way. And, biblically speaking, obviously that's where our show comes from. You can see it very clearly written in the Bible that, we're all given spiritual gifts of some kind. It's just a matter of how we use them, and I think maybe some of this for you is like, that's why this is happening more often, is because it's like anything, if you go to the gym all the time, you're going to get stronger. If you're using that particular muscle, and in this particular case, like a spiritual muscle, if you will, ability, then you're going to get stronger and you're going to get more attuned. So I think maybe that's what you're experiencing.
If you treat it with respect, and I really do try. As I say, whenever I step out of line and do something for ego, that's when the not good stuff happens. Yeah,
the oogie boogie's come crawling, bro.
It's like a headmaster saying to the naughty kid, just watch what you did there. That's what it feels like.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thanks, man, so much. This has been a great conversation.
We're going to have him back.
Yeah, very enlightening and very, very curious. It's been something that I guess over here for us, it's not been something that it was bigger when we were kids. It was more of a phenomenon, but it's not so much now. We skip right over that and go right to the aliens now is where we go typically.
Now I want to try to make one.
Let's see what kind of oogie boogies you can get. Huh?
No,
okay.
I love seeing them. The geometric shapes. That's just amazing.
Yeah,
to me that they do this, and how they have it all planned out. I've always wanted to,
the first one I ever did. As I said, it was a 2-stage event, and most of the work had been done before we went back because they run out of time. And before I went into the field, I said to myself, there is no way. What are they doing? What are the shortcuts? How are they doing this? And then I saw how it was done, and then the next day there was a new crop circle somewhere else. So I drove to Devices to see it, and I was looking at it with new eyes. I couldn't do it, but I knew how it was done. So I'd say, well, that bit there, a skeptic would say, because the other thing I say is this: unless you've actually gone to physically watch it being done or made one yourself, I don't really see how you can be an expert. A crop circle maker that I know says, I install boilers for a living, but I'm not really going to speak to anyone that can't pull one apart and put it back together again. So sometimes you'll see, how did they get in that bit? Well, it's because they're not using a meter board, they're using square boards, and then you realize you can mentally see how it was done. But that's not to say the conception and the idea. You go, that is, geez, to even that on paper is amazing, and they're very humble. Right, I've spoken to the big guys, the best. I was going to say the best in the business, but no one's getting paid for this. And they are completely humble. They've got no airs. They are absolutely one maker I know was doing it because he had missing time as a kid, and he's trying to connect with whatever it was again. And others say, well, I do it for art, but I've had strange things happening. So, mate, and I've had, you get back to the puppet master again. You just don't understand. And J. Allen Hynek, who's the godfather of ufology, said, even if we had the answer for ufology, even if we had the answer, we're not sophisticated enough even to understand it. I don't think we'd understand it if we were given it.
Yeah. Well, again, man, thanks. It was a great conversation today. If you want to find out more about D and read more about what he's got going on, again, I'm sure we've only scratched the surface today based on all the years of what he's been doing this, is you want to go over to his blog. It's itcan'tbepeople.substack.com. So it can't, include the apostrophe, be people altogether.substack.com, and you can actually read more about him. Well, D, hang in there for a second. We're going to go ahead and close out the show, but we want to give you a proper goodbye after we get everything shut down, just between you, Ben, and I.
Thanks, guys.
We appreciate you coming on, brother. It means a lot,
mutual.
Man.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Absolutely, man. We'll hang on for a quick second after we shut everything down, and we'll, like I said, we'll give you a proper goodbye offline here. Once we shut the feed off, you can stay in the room here, and we'll have our talk here in just a second. But all right, with that, we will bid you all adieu until next time on The Foil. Take care.
Bye.